Hello. Do you hear that noise behind me out there right now? I can hear that. That is the sound of an extremely cold-hearted bitch that actually started for me and is running. That miserable, frozen, no-heart tractor actually started for me. So I'm letting the hydraulics warm up right now. I'm getting some logs in here because when this thing decides not to start again before I get around to getting the heater in, it could take me 20 years to do it. No, it won't take that long, but we got it started. I'm going to get some logs in here so we can get them on the mill. We're going to try to work on that top plate we started the other night. This means I can mill up the rest of my top plates if I can get the logs in here. And if worse comes to worse, I'll get them in here and we'll use the chain hoist and everything just to pull them in where they have to be. Because I tell you what, I am damn sick and tired of not making any good progress on this, you know. So stay tuned. It should be a good one tonight. And I'll see you guys on the other side of it. Holy cow, here's the rest of the top plates, folks. This makes me happy. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull these logs onto this mill with these chain hoist. Probably not. So probably what I'll have to do is, I got to get the heater in that anyway. I got lucky it warmed up the last couple days enough to start that thing. Oh, it feels good though to get something back on the mill and get a couple logs in here. The only problem I have now with having the logs in here when I debark these is going to make a hell of a mess. There is a massive amount of dirt packed into the bark of these because when I skidded them out, it was through a sandy cornfield. This would be like running millions of rocks through that blade. I probably wouldn't even get the full length of these logs before I wrecked the blade on it. And I do not feel like doing that. But, so what we're going to do, I'm going to get this top plate here back up on the horses. We're going to lay this thing out and probably call it a night. That north wind is just coming right up into parts of me. I don't really feel like it being there. So, but plus side, this weekend I'll be picking up another truckload of sheathing boards. So that's going to go a long way towards finishing closing this thing off, and that'll make it so much more bearable to work in here. But it's really not that bad as long as you bundle up for it and all that good stuff. So I am just super excited to have this up, have this sitting here. Holy cow. This is the first real move towards good progress I've had in weeks on this with that machine being down. And I tell you what, it gives you an appreciation for what people used to have to do to build these things. You know, doing everything by hand. Of course, they usually had a pretty large group of people to do it, but still, it gives you a major appreciation for when the days before they were using. Holy shit, that gets heavier every time. There we go. Holy shit. You know, I think pretty soon I'll probably be playing the old blown disc lumbar lottery here. It's not too bad once you can get one end up on the horses, but it's getting that initial end up there that really sucks. It's even harder when these are up above. See that? No effort to that there. No effort at all. So we can live with that. Yeah, it gives you a major appreciation for what people used to have to do to build these things. Now, I've kind of screwed myself out of some room here, but we're just going to have to deal with it. I mean, if you can't tell looking around this place and this project, I'm pretty used to working in a mess, so I'm lucky I don't trip over everything all the damn time. So, here we go. Let's lay this thing out. All right. We may have a little wind issues here. It's kicking up, so we're going to try to do the best we can to talk our way through this. So we got to start laying out top plates for the western wall. And what we're going to do, I'm going to start with the first top plate. We're going to get the joints laid out in it and place the scarfs. Now I had a question from Tom Pitt today on what determines the length of a scarf joint. Typical rule of thumb for a scarf joint is the scarf joint is 3 to 4 times, the length of the scarf joint is 3 to 4 times the thickness of the timber. So I have a 10-inch timber here, and typically that scarf joint would be 30 to 40 inches long. I'm doing a little differently on these joints because it's a different style joint. I'm making them a little bit shorter. It's kind of a half lap, but it has tenons on each end. Now, we've discussed this joint before, so I can get away with making it a little shorter because on these top plates, it's a totally different load than what you would have on a tying member or something like that. There shouldn't be any tension on this. We're going for a no tension joint, and under the one end of the scarf joint, the very end of it, you're going to have a brace that sits in there and supports the weight of that and supports where the next top plate comes in. So it's a pretty good joint, and the reason I went with this one for these top plates is I knew I was setting these alone, and the joint that I'm using for this particular scarf, it allows me to set these alone so I can do one at a time. I don't have to line entire 50 feet worth of top plates up in order to make this work. So that's why we're using this. Well, we're going to start on the other end. And a good practice to do a good thing to do before you go to lay these out, put a lot of thought into these. These top plates, these are tying your whole wall system. All these vents are being tied together with the top plates. Now, you have your flooring's going to help with that. You have your floor joist anchored in. They're going to help with that. So there's going to be a lot keeping these wall posts from flying apart, from dropping off and tipping over. You're going to have siding that's going to help. You're going to have roofing. But remember, when you're building a timber frame, you're trying not to rely on sheathing and roofing and things like that to tie it together. You're trying to rely on the shear size of the timbers and the braces to support the whole structure. That's the whole idea of a timber frame, is to let the structure support itself, and everything else is just gravy. So we'll start on this end, and when you start off, measure everything up there. Measure every wall post with everything. Measure it all, because you don't want to have to take these off and recut joints and things like that, because these are hard to put on, especially by yourself. I mean, you guys, you've seen how I've done this before. I catapult these things up over the top of the chain hoist. I walk them over there, and then I'm lifting one end up at a time, setting them on sawhorses, scooting them over, and it's one of those poke and hope type things where you don't send it off over the side of the building or something like that, or go over yourself. So you're working on the edge, it can be a little dangerous. So you really want to make sure this thing's good and accurate before it ever goes up. That's going to save you a lot of time. Now, I had a little bit of joint adjustment when I did this one, but not on these. I screwed up when I did run a string line on my top plates to make sure that they were all right. That was a big, that was the Captain Stupid mistake video, you know what I mean? So I've had 3 good faux pas on this frame, and one of them we need to fix before I put these plates on, and that's going to be an entertaining video, and a lot of you are going to look at me and say, what the hell did you do that for? So it was a mismeasurement, and I didn't catch it until after it was standing, and I sure as hell wasn't taking it down. But here we go, enough talking, let's lay this out, see what we get. Our first measurement down the line I'm going to start off the end here. I've got my tape measure held off a little bit. So I got my tape measure like 1.5 inches over. So I'm going to start right at the 0 mark. We're going to go to our first wall post, which I measured out. It actually happens to be 10 inches and 1/16. Now, as you're laying these out, you see I'm laying everything out on the reference face. Remember, this is where everything, this entire timber is going to be laid out off of this reference face and your best adjacent face. Keep that in mind. That's why everything gets laid out on top, at least I do, and then I transfer the lines down below from the reference face. That is very important. One of the most important things you need to remember when you're doing this. So I got my 10 1/16. Now I have to put in for a brace. This is a 30-inch brace layout. So I'm going to go to 40 1/16. And I'm going to label that brace. We're going to keep going here. My next measurement down is going to be 144 5/16 inches. And keep in mind, make sure your tape measure is even all the way down. You don't want to kick to one side or the other. Believe me, a little mistake on these plates is really going to frustrate your day. It's probably the most critical of the framing members to really make sure you're cutting accurately. A lot of the other stuff you can fudge a little bit if you have to. So 144 5/16, 154 3/8. Measure that wall post. And you know what I almost screwed up? That brace up there needs to be 29.5 inches, not 30 inches. That would have been a good one. I have so many scribbles on this thing, it's going to look like a 6-year-old art project. So I'm going to have a brace up here, 29.5 inches. We'll move the camera. So we have that. Now, here's the important thing. One of the important things. So this particular scarf joint is going to have a 6-inch tenon on the end of it. So my brace pocket is going to sit right here. All right. I need to make sure, because this brace is going to sit on the underside of the scarf joint. So I really need to make sure that when I do this, I carry enough past here to give me a couple inches of meat on the end of this brace, so I have enough room to lay this out. So I'm going to do something a little different. We're going to carry this thing. I'm going to go minimum for myself. Now, you make your own way and figure your own what you want to do out of this. I label that brace. We go past 2 inches. We'll mark out 6 inches. That'll be our tenon. I better mark 6, not 4. Like I said, lots of scribbles. So this is going to be labeled our scarf tenon. Now, from this measurement here, the beginning of that tenon, I'm going to measure back 24 inches. Remember, I'm actually going back a little bit shorter on these joints than the standard rule of thumb. So 24. This can be scarf. Now, to save myself any confusion, we're going to transfer some of these lines out to the edge. And that way we have a good idea what's going on. And what do I do? There it is. North wind tonight. Damn, chilly. I also have to measure back for the braces, but I can do that on the underside. Okay, let's transfer some of these lines. Now here is an interesting thing. There it is. So, it's going to be, let's measure from the reference face there, Gomer. Remember, this is a tenon. Fortunately, it is, because I want to transfer this all the way down. And I'm going to label this tenon. I'm going to label it tenon cheek. Now, this is our reference face. Remember, this is going to be to the outside of the building. So this right here, this corner is our arris. So while I have my arris set up, I'm going to measure in 4 inches, 6 inches, and get our line across. These are actually going to be cut lines. I'm going to do the same thing here. 4 inches, 6 inches. This line gets carried across. And my framing square in here, remember the dimensions on these framing squares. One side's 2 inches, one side's 1.5 inches. Keep in mind those are your most standard tenon sizes. So a framing square gives you a really good way to mark a tenon out, and it keeps everything uniform. You can mark your mortises out the same way, have it turn out the same. Now, keep in mind I'm going off of my reference face still. I'm going to label this tenon cheek. Now I'm labeling that in such a manner so that I don't cut. I don't want to cut all the way through this tenon when I go to lay this out. So that's what we're trying to be careful of, trying to avoid. So if I label every part appropriately, I'll know when I'm cutting this off what's going to be wasted and what's not. You know, most times you X it out. And sometimes I find that too many X's on there just drive me friggin' nuts. We're going to mark the other part of the scarf out. What I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Double check this measurement. This framing square is 2 feet long. I'm going to measure from that line because I have a little bit of wane here. I was going to run a chalk line on this, but I decided not to. So this top half of this thing is coming off of here. That's our joint. I want to measure to 5 inches. Measure down. And do the same thing over here. Nose is running, making me hack tonight. Put you guys on the too much information train, right? There we go. I'm going to X this off because this will be our waste. So, basically, folks, we have this thing, all intents and purposes, we have this guy laid out. All I have to do is draw my lines. I'm not going to bore you with drawing square lines all over the place, but that's where we're at. So this one's laid out. Tomorrow night we can start cutting it and go from there. Well, I hope you enjoyed it tonight. If you couldn't tell, I was very happy to have that tractor running, get some logs in here so we can keep moving on some of the major stuff that needs doing. And these top plates are definitely the next major step that's holding me up from progressing more. So this weekend we're going to be picking up, like I said it earlier, this weekend we're going to be picking up another truckload of sheathing boards. So maybe we can get this thing just about finished closing this in, keep this wind, because it's getting damn cold out here right now. That wind's coming right off the St. Lawrence, right out of the north. It's just blasting me tonight. So we'll get on cutting this tomorrow night, hopefully, if the weather is good for us and all that, and I don't get any service calls, because unfortunately this is my on-call week, and I usually cry like a little 2-year-old the whole time. So anyway, hope you folks enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.